Welcome to the With Winning in Mind podcast. I am your host, Heather Sumlin, along with my co-host, Troy Basham. Today, we're tackling grief and how that might affect you in competition and in your training. So, Troy, what are your thoughts on this particular topic?
Like grief and like you just lost a close loved one or like a pet?
Well, depending on who you are, both could be equally as devastating. But which angle do you want to go with?
I'll take the one I think most obvious is someone that's close to you that's had a positive impact on your life in what you're doing, and they pass away in a part of the season that is in mid-season of your event.
Yeah.
So could be I just lost one of my parents and it's a week or two before the Olympic Games. It's right before a major game for a professional athlete. What do you do there? Like this week, we have the British Open or the Open right now going on in golf. What do you do if last week you lost your mom or your dad that were very close to you growing up and instrumental in getting you into the sport and that kind of stuff? How does that affect you competing? Do you compete? Do you not compete? If you do compete, what can you expect? You know, is it for your benefit or is it just kind of like, look, I don't know why you're here kind of thing? A lot of different ways you could approach it. My way of looking at it is I think one of the best things an individual can do after losing someone is to not change the schedule right after that in competition. Now, training would be different, but in competition, man, I'd go in that competition because I think more often than not, you're going to perform really, really good versus you're not going to perform good. And the reason why I say that is because you just lost someone, you just went through a brief grieving moment, and now you're going into a competition. Or we've seen this happen. A professional athlete finds out the day before a game that, let's say, the father passed away, and the next day they go out there and they play. Now, there's two sides. One is, how could you go do that? You know, your father just passed away. You should be at home with family. The other one is, well, but my dad will want me to play, so I'm going to do what I think he wants me to do, kind of thing. I think the latter is beneficial because if the person goes and plays in that, they're not going to overtry,
Right.
because their conscious mind is going to be somewhat on the loss. You know, it's going to be somewhere on the forefront. It's not in the back of your head because it just happened. So it's enough of a distraction that you're not going to be overthinking what you're doing. And you realize it's just a game. There's more important things in life than this game.
But do you think that in these circumstances, it's even more important than to have a solid mental process? Because the emotions could be overwhelming, or there could be things that trigger a memory, or that forefront of your mind could be overwhelming to think about instead of thinking about the task at hand. So having a solid mental strategy, I would think, is vital in these situations.
Being prepared for distractions definitely would help because you're going to be reminded by somebody somewhere during that.
I'm so sorry for you. I mean, every time you walk in front of someone, I would imagine.
Well, think if you're the common thing that comes up, I think in many people's minds that are football fans is Brett Favre when he lost his father and he played that game right afterwards and he played phenomenal. And people are like, wow, how'd you do that? And well, what would you want to do? You'd want to play for your father. And I'm sure during the game, I wouldn't be surprised if this happened, I should say. And that is, hey, your dad'd be so excited right now. Yeah. Well, he's still playing.
Yeah.
But the opportunity that one of your teammates or coaches would say that as a sign of encouragement might be there, but it also could be very distracting because it's like now it might bring up other memories and so forth. But the idea is that oftentimes when we're dealing with something that occupies our thoughts, it's an advantage to performing well because I don't overthink what I'm doing because I just have a little bit of distraction. So I remember this. I'll give you a personal one. You probably don't even remember this one. So when our grandmother passed away, so I was trying out for my first world team during the week that she was in the hospital and then she passed away. And so Dad would not give me any information. Like I would call him and say, okay, what's the status of Grandma? And he wouldn't tell me. You know, but in your mind, you know something could be happening. But what do? It's not like you. And for us, you know, we grew up on a horse ranch with our grandparents. My father's mom and dad lived on the ranch with us, and so as kids we would just go over there and hang out with Grandma, and then if you want to hang out with Granddad, you had to do work. He put you to work.
Yeah.
Grandma cooked you cookies.
Grandma fed you.
Grandma
Granddad
fed
made you work off what you ate.
Granddad made you work. It's like you want to go see Granddad. It's like you're fixing a fence, you're shoveling manure from a horse, you're
feeding
you're
horses.
saddling a horse,
Yeah.
you're washing a horse, you're doing something with horse ranch type manual labor. But if you go see Grandma, you know, she's like, oh, just have a seat. Let me bake you this. And she's feeding you. She's talking to you. And so there's a lot of fond memories of being supportive. And, of course, where I'm at a time to where, you know, a lot of things you share, who do you share it with? You share it with your parents or your grandparents and your siblings and so forth. So when we would go to matches, oftentimes they didn't travel, you know, because they were up there in age, but they were always there, wanted to hear about it and wanted to experience with you as you shared with them your journey in winning. Oh, I won this match. I won that match. Let me see the medal. Let me see the trophy. Oh, I remember when your dad won his first competition. Then she would give you that story of Dad and so forth. And so it was really a connection there. And so what do you do when you perform well? But just having that thought right there as far as I wonder how she's doing, it just made you realize that, you know, this is nothing. This is nothing more than I'm literally trying to hit a dot 33 feet away with a pellet more often than the other people I'm competing with. And yet my grandmother, someone who I really enjoyed being around and was very influential in my life at that time, is fighting for her life. So why do I care if I really hit this 10 ring or not? You know, so I'm going to enjoy the moment, because ultimately, what do people that are important to you want? They want you to enjoy life. So if you're competing as something you probably enjoy doing.
I hope so.
You know, most of the girls you work with in pageantry probably enjoy the competition aspect of pageantry in some form or fashion. They might not like this particular part of it, but the other parts override that. And for me, it's like, okay, what's more challenging than trying to stand still, hold a rifle as still as possible with iron sights, no scope allowed, and trying to hit a dot that's literally a 0.5 millimeter in diameter from 33 feet away with a pellet. Now, if you've never done that, that is extremely difficult to do. And so now what makes it more difficult is that while you're trying to shoot that, you have any thought coming into your head. When I look at tennis, I'm like, if I'm in the middle of a rally, I don't have time to think. So tennis and team sports are kind of more interesting in this fact that I have something a way to distract me that I can't get my own way. But in rifle shooting, you have plenty of time to get in your own way. So having this thought about, I wonder how she's doing, kept those passing thoughts of getting in my own way from happening. As a result, I shot really, really good. But when I got home, I found out the bad news.
I'm 4.5 years younger than Troy. And so all of our grandparents passed away before I turned 13.
This was at the very end, yeah.
All of them. And so I didn't have the same connection that y'all had, because Grandmom was sick before I ever started really caring about, you know, competing in anything or pursuing anything. And when Granddad passed away, I was 9, and he was my favorite human, like my all-time favorite human. And it just was so hard. It would have been difficult to go and compete immediately after, like, your favorite person leaving the planet. That would be hard. But as you said, like, maybe it would be purposeful. Maybe it would be important to, like, honor that person by competing and then letting it be kind of like in their memory.
Yeah, what are they going to tell you to do? Like, if you
they take
had a
peek.
conversation and they go, you know, and the example I gave, what would happen is very simple. It would be like, well, I can't do anything about my condition, so you should just go ahead and enjoy your competition. I've lived my life. You're starting yours. Why wouldn't you go?
Exactly. And they have the best seat in the house. If you believe that they that there's an afterlife and they're able to see you, then they would have the best seat in the house to watch you.
Yeah, but even if not, I think the words of encouragement they would give you would be something of the fact that, look, I'm at the end of my journey. You're at the beginning of yours. I want you to go do that. And I think that would be what I would look at is what would they tell me? And then whatever you think, regardless if it's true or not, go with it, because that's what's going to probably give you peace anyway. And you can see countless of stories, where people perform really good after losing a loved one. I often think about how these people get on these reality shows, like these talent shows, and one reason why they're there is because of a loss of someone close to them. And they were encouraged by the individual to go perform. You should do that. Where they lost like a spouse or a parent or a child, and they're there. And of course, we're emotional, and you see the judges tearing up. You see the audience members, they're tearing up because if they're really good, you're sitting there going like, well, why did they listen to this person earlier? And in one way, it's tragic because it took their passing to get this person to realize that maybe I need to go for it. But it's nice for the fact that they had someone in their life that was encouraging them, and they took the encouragement, and they didn't let the passing stop them. It actually launched them forward. So even though it sounds horrific that someone close to us in our life passes away, the reality is it's a part of life. We're going to experience death. If you live for any period of time, you're going to experience death. And you have a choice on how you want to handle it. You can handle it in a good way that's going to benefit with you, or you can handle it in a way that's not going to benefit you. And I think looking at it and saying, okay, what would they want me to do is a good way to do the former.
I think it's recognizing who you are and what you can handle, too. Because I don't know that everyone is in the same boat when it comes to how they grieve and what stages of grief they go through first and how they manage that. But I think if you're able to shift the perspective to a positive perspective, to be able to use it as a motivation to go and continue to pursue your dreams, whether it's in their honor or with their blessing, then that's a really good way to do it. But if you're not able to do that and you need to take the time off, it also to forgive yourself for that and to not feel like you're obligated to go and do anything you're not ready to go and do.
We can't predict what's going to happen. I look at it from a scheduling standpoint. So coming from an individual sport, a lot of Olympic sports are individual sports. And you plan your year out. You've got your competitions you're going to. Some are small, some are your big major events. And depending on when things happen, might alter your plans, and you might have to change where you go, where you don't go, kind of thing. And some of them are definitely out of our control. When we have something like this happen, I think if it's a major event that you've been striving for, I think it's easier for you to say, okay, I've got to go next week to do this. I don't want to. But we look back and say, well, what else are you going to do? You've been training your entire life for this. Go ahead. If it's something that's smaller, like a more regional, local event, I think it's the opposite happens. It's like, no, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to be with the family. So I think the degree of the performance and what it means,
like the competition and the importance of the competition.
Yeah, I think it definitely has an impact. And I was telling you before the podcast when I was in basic training, how the first, you get to basic training and they have something called 0 week. 0 week is the first week you're there. It doesn't count towards your 8-week basic.
Oh, so it's essentially a 9-week program.
It could be longer, but it could be even longer than that. The idea is they have you go through a physical fitness thing. They have you got to get all your your attire and that kind of stuff, because everyone's going to look the same. That's where you get your hair cut. You
Yeah.
get buzzed off, that kind of stuff. So it takes a few days, normally no longer than a week. And then they're assigning you to wherever you're going for training.
Okay.
But when you get to your training, like the first day, I remember one of the drill sergeants telling us, there's 50 of us in our platoon. He goes, one of you is going to lose a loved one in the next 13 weeks, because we're 8 weeks of basic, and then we got 5 weeks of advanced training, because we're all infantry. And he said, one of you are going to lose a loved one,
Yeah.
and you're not going to be able to go home and hang out with them for a week.
Right.
We might let you go for the funeral day, but you're coming back. Like you come back. And I remember thinking, well, that's kind of harsh. You're saying that the military is more important than your family. But their view is, this is the start of your life.
Wow.
And you're going to have to deal with this because you're in the infantry. You're going to be experiencing it.
And you
and it
could
was
wind
kinda,
up being deployed and have to deal with
and you might
loss
not get to go to that funeral of your grandparent, your parent, your brother, your sister, that kind of stuff. So just letting you know right now, there's no guarantees. But someone, and sure enough, several weeks in, someone passes of a family member, and it's like, what are they going to do? They're going to let them go? They're not going to let them go? That kind of thing. And it's like, hit you that, oh my gosh, what they said really, really happened. But what they basically are telling, because most of these individuals are 18, 19 years of age. They haven't experienced life. These drill sergeants, they're in their 30s and 40s. They've experienced all kinds of things. They know exactly what's going to happen. And it's not their first, every cycle, they know something is going to happen to somebody, family related, that is. And they're just preparing you day one. It could be you. Just make sure you're prepared for it. And don't be shocked if it doesn't work out the way you want.
I like that. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. So, make the most of today is something I think of when you're talking about, somebody is going to experience this. It's pretty sobering. It's like somebody's going to experience this. It's kind of sad. But then at the same time, we're not guaranteed. You and I aren't guaranteed tomorrow. None of us are guaranteed another day with the people that we love. So,
well, this is why the Olympics to me is so fascinating, especially in the sports where the Olympics is the big deal. Like there's some sports that I would argue that the Olympics is not the big deal. Like right now, if you were to ask a professional golfer, what would you rather have, Olympic gold medal or the Open title? I think they would take the Open title, or they would take the Masters, the green jacket. Oh, I want that. Okay. And not that the Olympics isn't a close, it's going to be up there, but try asking that to a track athlete, a swimmer, a diver, anyone that's in the shooting sports, and they're all going to tell you, oh no, the Olympics. Well, it comes every 4 years. So when it comes every 4 years, what does that mean? That means, man, if it don't work out that's a long wait. 4 years feels like a eternity, as you're preparing and you're training for that. But as you're preparing and you're training for that, you got to know anything's possible in that 4 year period. Are you prepared for it? So I think the biggest thing is that, are you prepared if the unexpected does happen? And if you're not, then I would definitely start thinking about what are the things I want to do to plan for the unexpected. And a death of a close one is definitely unexpected. Rarely do we know when something's going to happen. Sometimes we do.
or we have a good idea of a timeline.
Yeah.
But a lot of times we don't know.
But even that, like, oh, you have 6 months to live because you have cancer. And then, I mean, my wife had a friend of hers that was told she was going to have 3 to 6 months to live, and she managed to live 2 years. So it was kind of cool seeing that she got beyond that and so forth. But sometimes you don't even know. It's like, done.
Like, anything can happen. Anything can happen. I think, what are the big takeaways in your opinion as far as what somebody needs to keep in mind? So let's say someone's watching this and they're like, yeah, I literally just lost my mom or my dad and I have a major event coming up. So what are the things that you want them to take away, like understanding and maybe helping them to implement for the next competition?
Well, first it goes back to the question we asked earlier. What would they want you to do? I think more often than not, they would probably answer the same way we answered it. It was like, I'd want you to compete. And secondly is, what are you competing for? If you're competing for them, which some people are, what better way to honor that person than to compete? The second thing is, it's the competing and the journey that's probably more important to that individual than the actual winning. The winning is more important to you, the athlete, but to your loved ones, the one that might have passed, it's probably more the journey that's more important than anything else, because they're a part of that journey. Where when you're out there competing, like in my sport, it's me on the firing line. There is no one there with me. Now, they might be behind me watching me. I might be able to stop midway, ask the range officer if I can go talk to my coach, but they're not there to sit there and go, hey, by the way, you don't have that luxury. You don't have the luxury of the coach calling timeout and you're right there saying something immediately to you. You're there all alone trying to figure it out. It's like a runner. No one's helping them run. They're running. But they've got people that are watching them, that are supporting them outside. But in the end, who are you doing it for?
I like so what would your loved one want? What would their wishes be? Honor those wishes. Embrace the journey. And believe that it's going to be positive instead of a negative mentally for you to go ahead and compete.
So David Goggins, I don't know if you ever read any of his material or listened to him. He's a big motivational guy and no excuse on why you're not successful type of person. I get to watch him do a speech. Years ago, I was in Cancun. I was doing a speech, and he was going on before me. And when I looked at his bio, I had to watch him give his talk. And Francis thought it was crazy. You need to get prepared for your talk. You go right after him. And I'm like, no, I got to listen to this guy. And he reminded me of a military term that's often used. It says, embrace the suck. There's going to be times when things are just going to suck. Embrace it. And when you listen to his story on how he does it, now granted, it's much more fascinating than the average guy in that area. But he's absolutely right. What's the alternative? So what's I don't know what. There's very few things that are worse than losing someone close to you. What are you going to do? Are you going to try to deny it and go compete? Or do you just embrace it and accept it for what it is? Do what you want to do, what you've been trying to do, and honor them the best way you can and enjoy the moment. And I think most people, when they go in a situation, will perform better than they think they would. And I've heard people that have told me, they said, yeah, it's almost like they were with me, which is really, really kind of cool, So if they didn't do that, they wouldn't have that internal experience, of feeling that person with them, in some form or fashion. So I look at it from that perspective. One, what would they want me to do? Number two is that, why am I doing this? Who
am I doing it for?
Well, if I'm doing it for me, I should just go for it. If I'm not, I'm doing it for them. That goes back to the first question. If I'm doing it for other reasons, I bet it supports one or the other two. And putting things in perspective, we do things, we have reasons for doing things, but the third thing I would say is that you have to prepare for the what if. And if you don't think about it and it happens, then you're in trouble. If you already thought about, okay, if this happens, what am I going to do?
I think one of the things for people who, if you haven't lost anyone, look around at the people who are so supportive of you and take a moment to thank them. You'll be thankful that you did.
Yep.
Because there'll come a time when they're potentially not going to be there to be able to watch you. So thank them now. If you have a parent who's supporting you, or a coach who's supporting you, or a family member, give them a hug and say, thank you so much for enjoying my journey and being a part of it. And we want to thank you for taking the time to listen and to follow us, subscribe to this channel if you don't already. Join our Patreon membership. We're going to do a deep dive into other practical ways that you can use mental management when you're trying to prepare for those unknowns. Thank you, Troy, for your perspective, as always. And we hope that you have not lost someone on your journey. But if you have, we are so incredibly sorry for your loss, but we're excited for your future. Embrace the suck.